It was really dangerous. The thing we were worried about almost happened. This rear axle in front of us. When it was last repaired, it was already his boss's turn. They promised a 3-month warranty. But after exactly 3 months and 1 day, it cracked like this. Of course, the master had predicted this. Because the owner often overloads the vehicle, cracking was inevitable. Luckily, the warranty had already expired. Otherwise, this 2,000 rupees would have been unbearable. Thanks to the experience from the last repair. This repair was much easier. They didn't even need to use the hydraulic press for assistance. They simply brought a chain and tied it to both axle heads of the rear axle. Then they placed the jack at the cracked position. They wanted to use the pressure from the jack to pull the 2 ends of the chain upward, but pressing it directly wouldn't work. So after tightening the chain, a long-haired mechanic used an oxyacetylene torch to heat it, improving the material's ductility. Then another mechanic operated the jack to push the chain upward. As the mechanic continued working, the crack visibly closed toward the center. They kept pumping the jack handle again and again until the crack was fully closed. To make the next steps easier, once the crack was closed together, they performed a few tack welds to hold it in place. Because further adjustments might still be needed, they didn't weld too much. After simple tacking, they removed the jack and the chain. Only then could they use the dial indicator to check alignment. When using the dial gauge, they had to rotate the rear axle while checking the needle for runout. As the master rotated it, there was clearly some slight runout, but the experienced master said it was fine. If there's a problem, it's someone else's problem. After that, they began welding. This time the warranty is also 3 months. So before welding, the master didn't open a groove. He went straight to maximum power and welded bit by bit to ensure the weld had no porosity or cracks. After each layer, the master chipped off the slag and inspected it. Although he knew this step was somewhat unnecessary, they still followed the full procedure. They continued this process until the entire weld was filled. However, welding alone couldn't completely solve the problem. Previously, the master had added a nearly 1 centimeter thick steel plate at the bottom for reinforcement, but it still cracked again. So the master decided to cut it out. To prepare for further repairs, he didn't cut out the entire plate, but instead cut triangular shapes on both sides of the cracked area. Not only at the repair location, but also on the original rear axle housing, he cut out a triangle. By cutting a triangular shape into the rear axle housing, they changed the structure's shape and stress distribution to disperse the stress. The cut-out steel plate was not thrown away. Instead, the master cleverly used it as a template. He placed it on another steel plate and traced the exact same shape. Then, using the torch, he precisely cut out a new steel plate matching the template. However, the freshly cut steel plate could not be used immediately. The master needed to carefully grind it to remove the burrs. Only after this crucial step could the plate be fitted back and welded in place. This process may seem tedious, but every detail is crucial. To ensure the next patch could be installed smoothly, after welding the triangle, the master skillfully used the grinder to grind down the protruding weld beads until they were smooth and flush. Only then, when welding the patch back, could it sit perfectly flush with the axle housing. since the rear axle housing has a curve, while the patch is flat. During welding, the master had to use a special technique. He held a hammer and gently tapped, with each strike showing his pursuit of perfection, making the patch conform perfectly to the axle housing. Flawless. To make the patch extremely strong, after welding, the master reinforced the internal weld seams. Only then could the owner drive with peace of mind. To make the overall repair look nicer, after reinforcement, the master used the angle grinder to clean everything up. After grinding, the master reinstalled the differential assembly, and checked it carefully once more. Whether it works well or not, at least the differential must fit back in. Only then could they hand it over. To make it look brand new, the master carefully sprayed a layer of black paint over the repaired area. Only after striving for perfection would he deliver it to the owner. In the end, when the owner saw the rear axle, he could hardly believe it was his own. Although repairing rear axles this way is common in Pakistan, such exquisite craftsmanship is quite rare.